All right, folks, welcome to the other side of awakening. I just want to say I really appreciate all the positive feedback and support for this so far. Again, as I start all of these off, this is not an anti-medicine podcast. It's actually just completely the opposite. I have so much reverence for these medicines and how they're being utilized. Again, I think an area that's not discussed enough is, again, what about some of the difficult experiences and what are some ways to potentially minimize these, right? Is it better screening? Is it better facilitation? Is it better integration? So how do we learn from some of these other experiences? So how do we learn in general? And I'm grateful to have Sandy with me today, who her and I have had some phenomenal conversations over the last few weeks, and I just think she's going to be just super impactful and some of her shares about her experience and again maybe some of the flags that she saw, some things to look out for. And so if you're looking to potentially step into one of these spaces, especially with 5-MeO, it's just a different medicine that you can do it and feel a little bit more confident that you're stepping into it safely, you're asking the right questions, and you're prepared for it. That being said, thank you for taking the time. And if you have a minute, can you just share with everybody just your background in general, as much as you want to share? I think your profession's important, but what have you been doing, work-wise, and just any of your background that you feel comfortable sharing?
Okay. So my profession is as a registered nurse, and I've been in that profession for a long time. I think I'm 28, 29 years now, something like that. And my main focus over the years, although I've worked dialysis, I've worked and an endoscopy, I've worked IV therapy where we administer the chemotherapy for people, and now I'm an infusion nurse, so I work with high risk medicines and have been. I had actually stepped away from that because of all the years of being in my profession and what I've seen over the years, a lot of trauma. Just being in it, we weren't taught, and in my generation, we weren't taught to process. We were just taught to go from fire to fire to fire to fire and keep going. And then when you step out of work, you just shut it all down. But that doesn't work so well. So I actually stepped away from a year, retired for a year. Um, I was completely burnt out. I was really having difficulty being in the hospital space. I was very angry about that had happened to me, and very grateful for the year that I was able to work through so much, including my own history. That would come up, history, and was able to return back to work this past year and really coming back with a different perspective and really being able to step more and being so present and enjoying my work. So that's a little bit of that history. I'm
Beautiful.
62, so I've lived a little bit. Not sure what else. What else?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think it's a good lead up into just being curious. And again, I know a lot of this, but for folks that are just meeting you, if you could share a little bit about what led you to work with this particular medicine, 5-MeO or Bufo. What kind of brought you to the space? What were your intentions, so to speak?
So, but I've worked with different medicines, not for a long time, but I want to say since 22.
Okay.
Ayahuasca was initial, and I did go through MDMA sessions because I was having flashbacks from trauma, and that really was helpful. In that space, I also worked with one small dose of 5-MeO, which I actually had quite a shock. It was good. I think it was considered the hug. I'm very, very sensitive to the medicines. I was told that when I traveled over in Peru. They thought it a good thing. They said you're able to connect. I'm not saying like that's wonderful. What I have found is a little bit goes a very long way for me. So that was something I always had to keep in mind. Where other people like wanted more medicine. It's not the case for me. So I deal with anxiety over the years since I've been young. And I had a friend talk to me, he had beautiful experiences, really embraced um, beautiful love, surrounded by love. I've had in my lifetime near death experiences, and I have experienced that. I've experienced this incredible love. When I was very young, I had a drowning experience. I was not aware of it. I was in a place that was absolutely beautiful. It was completely surrounded, the safest I've ever been. My sister pulled me out and I was furious because it was the most beautiful space I'd been in. When I did the small dose of the, it was actually Bufo because it was the organic, I felt that. But for me in that, it was like someone turned it on and shut it off. And I was angry because I could feel that. I'd been chasing that, like that's where I want to be, not here, not present here in this world. I struggled for all my life to be present in this reality. Um, so coming into it was in the spring, and a retreat was coming up with people that I trust, and had history, gained trust because that took therapists and another person that I trust, and some other people that I actually felt good with them, just for an interview. But my I'd been struggling with deep anxiety again, especially in the morning. I had the loss of my mother, which hit me, I, which is good. I hadn't really felt grief. I hadn't allowed. I had lost my wife years ago. Hadn't ever dealt with the grief. Kept running, and so I've been working on working through the grief versus running from the grief and any other emotion because I've shut down a lot, and then it comes out as a lot of people know, either as flashbacks or not unpleasant experiences. And the MDA, like I said, really helped me for that, work through that. So when I heard this was coming up, I had a poll. I'm like, I think I'd like to work with this medicine. And my intention going in was, I just want to feel the embrace. I hadn't felt I just want the embrace. Just, and then I feel like I will be able to continue here with personal work. But I just need to have that. That's actually how I felt. I need to have that. And then in my rest of the intention, and then whatever else I need, I was open to whatever else I need. Pretty open. And I should know this from working with ayahuasca to be careful with your intentions. Because you will get what you need. So that was the leading up to it. Now I work with therapists and they had concerns, knowing knowing me, knowing the strength and the power of the energy of this medicine, and one who had worked with it and was going to be the facilitator and gone through the classes and is very safety minded, and the other person that concerns about destabilization for me. So I listened to them and I really wanted to sit with it. And that's what I said. I said, I just keep having this pull. So I'd like to go through the process. And then if I find, no, it's not a fit for me, um, or there was a hard stop, then I'd have to accept it. And I knew inside I'd be disappointed for whatever. Like, I want to do it because so and so said it's a beautiful experience and you're going to feel wonderful. And you have to, one of my friends said, you have to do this before you die. I said, I'll do it before I die. So, um, so that's what led me to working with medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. And just kind of correct me if I'm wrong for folks that are tuning into this. So we had two therapists that you were familiar with. One you were very familiar with, we friends, and then a head facilitator that was essentially running the training. And and again, just from our conversations, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, you've kind of shared that I'm sensitive to the medicines in general. Just in general, I'm sensitive to medicines, and the therapist where they're training and learning some concerns about you slipping into the experience because of the sensitivity. Is that fair?
I'd say that's fair. Yeah, because I think I understood you right. Concerns about the power of the energy of this
Yeah.
medicine and what it might do psychologically for me, since they knew me deeper in a therapeutic way. Yeah.
And just so from the head facilitator standpoint or the trainer at that stage, how were they involved before the actual ceremony? Like, my understanding is a lot of times they'll send out paperwork that you kind of fill out. What was their involvement? Did you get any face to face with them in advance? Did you get to share that you're sensitive to it? Like, what was the initial like pre-ceremony process like for you?
Yeah. So actually, and this felt like it was on the right track because there was paperwork. It was pretty extensive, and I felt I was as honest. I wanted to be honest because I was hearing the concerns and I knew that I'm going against the concerns, so it was like, so let me be as honest. And that's what I said. I said, just want to go through the process and now listen to, again, who I felt was the expert with this medicine. Um, and it was, like I said, it was in depth and I did write where I was psychologically, my intention. Yes, it came up. We did a Zoom call also, a one-on-one. I think there were three other people on that. I'm trying to remember. I remember two. I can't remember who was the third with the head person that was the mentor for these other people. And actually the therapist who I work with, she even brought up some questions, which I was glad, like to flag, like let's have this discussion while he was there, so he could hear them and then give his opinion. Um, and actually, I was thinking in the Zoom call that that would be it, like that would be the stop for me. And it
Mhm.
wasn't. And he felt, no, no, I think that you can work with this medicine. So I was like, oh, okay. Um, and and so I went to the next step to show up. And again, I think that it was continued to be voiced the concerns from my therapist. And I said, I will go. I want to continue. And I'm okay with, and even though I'll know I might be sad or disappointed in the moment when I sit there and I'm going to be served, if there's like, this is probably not a good idea, or the smaller dose or something doesn't go right, that we stop. Um, so that was how I stepped in, and they agreed to. But I have to say, for them, they were in the learning process too, and there were questions, even though there were flags, like which we had a discussion. There was following the person who's the expert, who's your mentor. And, this is something that you've worked with someone, but again, this is all learning and following what they suggest and finding out later actually that they assumed the other person, their student basically, had the answers or had more knowledge or whatever. And the student was looking to the mentor for um, the knowledge, like
Sure.
this is who they are. Should we go this? And they were like, sure, whatever you think. So, and in that point, the space I was in, I was already going through two doses. And so I was already a little skewed, but I was following what I felt inside. And then they were sitting with the person that was facilitating still the student learning. She was sitting with really her gut feeling and trying to follow that because, she said, I think I would have stopped it actually, but again, there was this following the expert thing. It's a hard
Right.
space for them. It was a very difficult situation afterwards when I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say
Tricky.
so. Just taking a small step back.
Mhm.
Um, and it seems like maybe this happened. It's just something if you're a facilitator or a student in facilitation, something that I just personally recommend is I've sat with facilitators or worked with facilitators that have the forms. They ask really great questions, and you fill out these questions. And I remember going through the process once myself, where they sent me the forms, and I'm super ADHD. I have a tendency to rush through things, so I'm given like kind of rushed answers. And that's why I've always been an advocate of like, absolutely, you could have these forms, beautiful, where you can ask these questions on paper. A lot of folks feel better writing them down, but I also think that those are really good conversation pieces because there's so much nuance in kind of the facial expressions, body posture, everything that we know that comes from like human communication. So I think having folks write the answer is beautiful. I think the ideal move is to have them write it and then have a conversation about it because then you could dig a little bit deeper into sort of history and some of these other things. Um, and I think that's an interesting aspect of it or an important aspect of it. But the fact that they did go through some paperwork up front, probably talk about some medical, all
Yep.
psychology is is
Yep.
is is a good start. Um, Now you touched on the experience a little bit, but let's go back to the very beginning, the first
Mhm.
time, the first dose. So you sit down. What was the actual first experience like for you? Like emotionally, psychologically, what was going on in your mind prior to actually taking the medicine? Were there doubts? And then what was that experience like for you?
So, of course, and I think this is healthy. There's fear, not like panic, but more like anticipatory um,
Sure.
anxiety going into like, I don't know how this is, don't know. And it was different because it was a vape pen. So this was a different experience for me. And I was explained very carefully, but now I see the to only inhale so much. In hindsight, this person also will never allow anybody to hold the vape pen again, because there's definitely like you can inhale as much as you want before they can start, but they have to knock it away. So there's a safety thing there. So my first experience, I felt that good explains, like the person who was facilitating it, like I said, I trust her. She was very concerned about my safety. And she was talking with the head facility, like they were having a conversation. How much should we do? Should we start? So I heard that. So I'm like, okay, this feels like, good information. They're passing, they
Yeah.
understand. And I knew she understood. So and I also understood she was in the learning position also. So very low dose because I think they were aware, she was aware of the sensitivity. So very low dose. I really didn't feel anything. I lay down. It was, if it was anything, it was very subtle, but next to nothing. Way less than my other experience that I had. So I would say there was nothing. And later, actually, the head facilitator says, "Oh, we went too light with you," and I was like, my eyes nearly popped out of my head. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So that was a definite flag right there. Went too light? I don't think so. So that was the first round.
Okay. And, I'm assuming you laid there for a little while, then kind of reported back in. They checked in with you, and you're like, that was
Yeah.
really light. I didn't feel much. So they determined to maybe raise the dose for you.
Yes, yes, and actually, so I was asked, because again, she had the conversation with the facilitator, and he gave her a couple of options. It sounded like I'm trying to remember, but anyhow, I know she was conversing, so she was really paying attention and trying to make sure that the next dose, was not too high, not too much. So she gave me an option. She goes, we can go a little deeper, quicker, shorter time. She goes, or a little less but longer. And I chose a little deeper, quicker, shorter time. So we did that. What I didn't realize is I guess I went completely out. I just
Um,
don't really have memory. I remember feeling the medicine. Um, I had no surrender or a choice about it. And I guess I was out. And I don't really remember that. I just remember sitting back up again, and feeling really intensely sad. So that emotion was just so sad. But no other, like, wow, that was beautiful. None of it. It was just, I say a sound, this vibration coming in, and that's it. And I guess I don't know. I'd have to double check, but I think it might have been 20 minutes. So still kind of long for a second dose, I guess, from what I hear. Um, that was the
yeah.
second part, but not really, again, not really having a sense of anything else, really blank. Just when I came to and sat up, I didn't even realize like what had happened. And I felt this really, really intense sadness.
Hmm. I wonder, not that we need to kind of psychoanalyze your experience right now, but just touching on what you shared earlier about the near-death experience and the sadness of being pulled out of that. I wonder if there's
Mm.
any connection between that, but um, maybe there was an experience of that. I've always, it's just my personal experience. I remember it was my fourth or fifth experience. I remember looking at my wife and telling her, I'm like, I think that's what happens when you die. It felt like for someone that's not had a a near-death experience, that was the closest my brain could comprehend of what potentially it would be like. And same thing. I remember like I'm okay with this, right? Like let me stay here. I'm very comfortable where I'm at. So coming
Right.
back was also a little bit of disappointment for it.
And
Um,
and I have to say, I have no remembering of that experience that I had felt before, even when I had some vagal things where I was near death or some other things, where it was also that sense of being in between because I had an awareness on the, and when I would come back,
mm,
like they bring me back here, I'd be disoriented and I'd be like, oh, I'm back here. I didn't have any of that. It was blank. It was blank.
gotcha.
Yeah. So I didn't have that, at least again, an awareness of. So I might
Yeah.
have gone offline and didn't even know it.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. Again, like it seems like the previous one, there's some awareness and then some contrasting of there versus here,
Mhm.
versus in this experience, if you're just gone, right? You don't even know it, you're just now here.
Yeah,
So there's not that contrast of like, oh, that was beautiful, now I'm here. It's just like
yeah,
now I'm here.
yeah.
And with that brings a level of sadness. What and again, just for anybody listening, and if the folks that were at that training or ceremony are listening, I absolutely love the folks that you were working with. The two therapists that were there, phenomenal people.
Yes.
And I love the facilitator, also good human. Um, but again, we kind of talked before the podcast started. It's a tricky space, right? As you're learning, you have a mentor. You may have some insights or some gut feelings or just some thoughts about maybe the direction it should go. You're still kind of learning. You're a little bit nervous maybe about voicing that, and that whole dynamic could be a little tricky to navigate. But I think the facilitators, especially the ones in training with you, are phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I would agree. Absolutely. Trust them. I would
yes,
trust. I did not lose any trust for them. And they really, it was a incredible learning experience. And, and a lot of things that happened post for them were really
yeah,
difficult.
yeah,
Difficult.
and I'm with you. I don't. It's rare that I'm not very. I'm very cautious about who I sit with. I would absolutely sit with them and feel 100% comfortable. So that should count for something because again, I'm very cautious about who I would sit with. Um,
And
so
I
after this,
tend to be that person. Yes. And overall, I've been cautious, I would say. I mean, I think that's also, I have to watch it because I have an edge where I tend to push. And that's something I have to work on, push an edge. That's an enduring characteristic that's, for survival tip. And so I have to be aware of that. So there could have been that in play also.
sure. Um, so you had the second experience, came out, felt some level of sadness. What did you guys go in for a third dose or was that end of the session?
No, went for a third dose. It was definitely a discussion around that. Very serious discussion with the person facilitating. Like she was looking at me, really trying to fill out, wanted me to be sure. Um, and then checking in with a mentor who seemed, in hindsight, and they were a little too casual. Is my gut feeling. Like it was like, sure, almost feeling. That's the feeling I had. But she was like really, and she told me later she really had to sit with the feeling, because she had mixed feelings about my third dose. True real concerns. And like I said before, there were concerns anyhow. And then there was a question of the dosing. And later she found out that it was pretty much put on her. He just agreed, but he thought she was like, oh, what I thought you knew. She was trying to get guidance and wasn't given guidance. Um,
Mm,
so, though that again was yeah, hard to know. Like, how would anybody know that when they're
sure.
again, just following flags afterwards, and sitting with it and going through it. But so the third one, I said yes, I wanted the full dose, and I did voice. I said I'm very very sad, but I feel like I want to go forward. It's just this deep sadness. And again, like they had the conversation back and forth. The person facilitating and the mentor, and I'm a little foggy at that point because I do realize I was a little now that I was in still that second dose, and probably that was could have been a full release because I was unaware of other than
Yeah.
coming back and nothing in between. And she explained that inhale like 3 to 4 seconds, go lighter. And again, in hindsight, she said she would never have someone hold the pen themselves again. Because I actually did 4.5, and for me, that's a big deal. And I didn't even know it. She was getting ready to grab if I had, you know, but she had shared that, but I didn't even know I did that. so,
Yeah.
so couldn't tell you what the dose is because I don't know. It doesn't
Well,
matter, I guess.
and there's so many variables on that, and I want to get back to your story. Again, I think this is a great brief learning phase. I've seen folks that allow the participant to hold the pen. I never do that. right? It's not just the amount of seconds that they're pulling on the medicine. I'm listening to how hard are they pulling, right? Like
True,
it's
true.
significantly different than
Right.
right. So it's like there's so much more than I press the pen for 4 seconds, right? And also I don't want to have to take that from some I want to be in control of it, not because I'm a control freak, but I'm the facilitator, and I want to really listen to and kind of observe all the cues and determine, yeah, I was going into this with the idea of 6 seconds, but I think four is going to be okay right now, right? I get to
Right.
make that
Right.
determination, and that's kind of my responsibility. And that's the tricky part of the vape pens is again, how hard they're pulling makes a difference, right? And
Yeah.
if the participant's holding it, there's already like a little bit of nervousness, maybe they're still in an altered state from a previous dose, and they're trying to. It's like it's too much. I just want my participants just all you have to do is take a deep breath in, let it out, and then slowly pull. I'll do the rest, right? So all the participant, in my opinion, should be focused on is inhaling the medicine. I will dose it, I will count it, and I will kind of administer it.
Right.
So I'm not a fan, and I've seen this. So if you're facilitating, you're letting people hold. I understand what your intention is, but I don't think it's ideal. So I apologize. So they let you hold it. You
Yeah.
took in about 4.5 seconds.
Yeah. And I have to say, just to step into that a minute, I absolutely agree with it from a safety and just my experience in talking to my therapist about it, because when she did the organic, she held it. That was her training. And I did it in very clear instructions. Not that she didn't do clear instructions, and we were told, don't suck like a straw. So I
Right.
tend to follow the instructions because I'm concerned about my own safety too. And I don't want to put the facilitator in a spot because I'm being a jerk. So um, that's a lot for my profession. I know how things can go wrong very, very
Yeah.
fast. So yeah, so I 4.5 seconds, and the power of that energy I have never felt before. There was no surrender. There, I was just blasted. I had someone who had a similar experience describe it, and I absolutely agree with his because couldn't find the words to holding onto an electric fence, shooting into hyperspace like Star Trek, and getting beamed up into molecules in a time that I can't even fathom so fast. So, and and
Sounds about right.
yeah, and that was it. That and the only thing after that that it stayed with me, and it still stays with me. I'm still working on it. Was these words? I'm so lost. I'm so lost. I'm gone. Now they told me that I did say those words, and I don't know how. I heard I was again. It was a good. I might have been 40 minutes. I can't remember. I was going for a while, longer than what commonly is. And when I was starting to come back, and I didn't know where I was coming back to, that was a very disorienting experience. I did feel, and they had told me because of who I am that they might have two people hold my feet. They may, I might feel hands on my body. Wanted to make sure that was okay with me and who was going to be doing that. So that before that even happened. So I'm very grateful that it was a conversation about who will be where because of my history of trauma and abuse that I could react to that, like not knowing. So I first thing that came online, I believe, was my hearing, I guess, because I remember hearing, thankfully, breathe, you're safe, just breathe. And I knew the voice. So I followed that voice. And I think in my head, and this is the fear, if I hadn't heard that voice, I don't know if I could have made my way back. Now that might not be true, but that was my feeling when I was aware later with reactivations. I then felt pressure on, I could feel someone holding my hand in my other hand. I could feel the pressure on my feet. I could feel someone having a hand on my chest. Um, And then I opened my eyes, and I'm grateful the person that I trust, she was right there smiling. So, I felt a sense of, oh, I know this, I'm safe, but I had no idea where I was. Like, and I want to say this in a way that might sound strange with people, but I had no idea what reality I was. So somewhere, because I could feel this shifting in my head, like trying to sort out like pictures, like, all right, what place is this? What the which one is this? Where am I? And that's kind of what I did. Like I recognize people, but they look so strange. I look strange. Like, and I remember asking these questions, like, why do you look so different? Where, what the heck? There were pieces missing. I knew them, but they weren't right. And I wasn't right. And I had to try to like, and they were talking to me and holding me, and I would look at like I had a hand, like the hand, everything was odd. My hand, like the fact that I had a hand. I remember voicing crazy. Well, it's not crazy, but it was the truth for me. And it's like, how come I can't see my mouth? So whatever I was, sorry, my dog's barking in the background, um, having for me, I that was difficult orienting. And I think it took some time. And they were very reassuring, like, don't get up, don't move, um, just stay where you are. Um, and I remember looking out a window and I'm like seeing that there's green in the foliage and what it was. And I'm like, oh, I'm here. Like, and it was like I had to shuffle through almost if you're looking at a map or whatever. Oh, I'm in this place. Okay. So that was hard. That was one of the other facilitators. I didn't get to talk to him, which I'm very disappointed in, because he was watching this. He said, I haven't seen anybody come back like that. And I wanted to have a conversation with him. I think I needed to have that conversation, and that was interrupted later. Um, anyhow, that was my coming back, and it took so long, or at least I felt it. And even look, I didn't know what legs were. Like, and people had feet. I remember looking at everybody's feet, like, what? We have feet. All these things were happening. So really, really in this very strange space. Yeah. So,
At what point, I guess, did you start realizing the experience maybe had become, destabilizing or difficult or, yeah, when was
I'm
like the
not.
first time?
I'm well, possibly, but I'm not sure. When they finally got me onto a couch, and the other person that I know was sitting with me and had like body contact, like with my feet, so that felt good to keep me grounded. And I understood that like someone got a wet cloth because cold has helped me. So I knew. So there was a part of me that maybe, or they knew that I was out there. So so I was not in this world, and so maybe a little bit there, like, wow, I'm not even sure I was aware of it, to tell you the truth. And then another person went into their um, experience, and the music that they were playing was really unsettling for me. And next thing I
Mm,
know, I'm going to vomit. I could felt myself starting to write. And I think when I was coming to, I forgot about that. There was a lot of retching. There was pain. My back was in incredible pain. There was a lot of physical sensations. I'm not saying that's destabilizing.
sure.
And I don't even know what they told me I went, because I remember being told to not interrupt someone else's ceremony, to like get yourself out of there, like go to the next room, which I did. And I remember being on the ground and retching and then out of it. And then little bits and pieces of getting to a mat. There were the other facilitators showed up, got me there. And I was told I went back into a full experience again. Um, and that was strange and exhausting and weird. Like, again, the same thing, having to come back orientated again. Like, it kept going on. Um, and then seeing other people sit, like I heard someone say, I think before I done it, that they just knew they were going to be okay. And when I heard that voice, I'm like, I am not okay. Like, there's something within me was like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And they were, I gotta say, they were trying to find later, like some foods, bringing back, slowly giving me time. It was hours. When I
Wow.
finally was aware of time, it was 5:30. We had started this at 10. I don't know exactly what my experience was. I really don't know, but it certainly wasn't 20 minutes and you're up and driving.
That is unique, and if I'm hearing you correctly, so you had with the third dose, settled a little bit on the couch, felt a little sick. Somebody else was having an experience. You shifted to another room, and then you had another full offline experience.
I believe that's what they told me. Yeah, I
Wow.
was going again. Yeah. And it felt like the music from the person's I couldn't stay in it. It was, and I've had difficulty with music and reading. It's just starting to come back where I can listen to some music since then. Like it's my whole body just feels unsettled.
Was it? I'm just curious, just some thoughts on this. Was it really percussion type music? Like, boom, boom, boom? Was it like
No,
beats, or was it very smooth and flowing?
I think it was smooth. I actually
Mm,
don't even remember. Honestly, when you ask
okay.
me, I don't even know. I'm thinking there was piano, but I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, not at all.
Um,
Yeah, music's an interesting one for me. Like the percussions will send me back into it. Like makes me like physically uncomfortable. Mm, almost like wanting to purge. Right? I can feel it. I
yeah.
don't I don't like it. Um, the
Yeah, the
smooth
retching, I
music.
could feel they were saying it's beautiful. I remember hearing that it's beautiful because I was retching, and part of me is going, it's beautiful, and there might have been, again, just from working with ayahuasca, I understood some of the purging, but then I was going again, just not there. There's like it's maybe not as deep. It was vague. It's like echoes. That was more like echoes, but it I think I was gone. I
Yeah.
really. And someone
Well, that's
stayed with me. They kept talking to me, and I don't remember
beautiful.
their words now, but they stayed with me. I think they kept telling me I was safe, um, over and over and over and over.
Well, that's a pretty big kind of reactivation right out of the gates. I mean, that's not common. Um, you know, and my guess is, and this is just a guess, the pin you were using was probably like a 4-to-1 pin or a 3-to-1 pin. And usually with those pins, I find it takes about 7 or 8 seconds for a full release. So, if it was a stronger pin, obviously different. So I'm just making some assumptions here, but let's say like a heavy hug dose maybe was enough to give you this full experience, kind of unsettle you a little bit, and then potentially an hour later have you have a full reactivation back into the medicine. That is not extremely common. And the fact that again, as you're explaining it, it's like I know they were talking to me. I don't recall a lot of it. Right. That means that you were pretty deep in that process, right? You were very deep in that process. So that's unusual. Not uncommon, but pretty unusual. And I think for some folks in training, that could be that's a tricky case, right? But it seems like they handled it well. Like, okay, you just had another experience. Let's sit with you, make sure that you stay safe, reassure
Yeah.
you. Um, what were and I know we've kind of touched on some, but maybe bullet point if you could. What were the major red flags or moments that now you look back on, right? Like everything's interesting in hindsight. Like I kind of shared my story with you prior to the podcast. It's in my book of, going through it. I'm like, oh, this is what we do. This seems like
Right.
normal, right? And then
Right.
looking
Right.
back now, I'm like, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
wasn't safe. That wasn't good. We could have done
Yeah.
this differently.
Right.
Hindsight being 2020, so we could potentially learn from it. What were some of the red flags or moments you now look back on and say, I think things could have gone differently?
Honestly, in the Zoom call, I think when my therapist was actually pulling up what she felt were some concerns, I think that the head person dismissed her.
Mm,
And and I was probably looking for that. Okay, yeah, no, you can do this medicine. In hindsight, I think that because she asked me some questions, I answered them. This is true. These are these things. And I think that he was coming from almost a whole different place of, you know, and I'm not trying to be smart ass about it, but like a light and love, like it's all going to be good. And that right there, I probably said, huh, I didn't hear you really address this. And I think she tried again some questions, but again, it was a tricky situation. Like, all right, they're the person that they're the professional, let's say. We're actually the profession. there was the lack of the psychological understanding. That is
Sure.
huge. That is huge. For all the paperwork and questions, like you said, I don't think the answers that I put down were addressed. I think if she hadn't brought them up, that wouldn't even have been addressed. Um, so I think there was a lack. They might have filled a lot of things out, but I don't know if he even read it, honestly, from my conversation. Um,
Sure.
so there's that. And then I don't think I was aware of it just from conversation later. I think the third dose was I should have been overridden. I know the facilitator, like she now feels like she would have had to override the teacher and say no.
Mm,
Um, and I agree. That probably would have been stop right there. That was enough for today.
yeah.
Um, because I think that third, I think that I still definitely would have had to work through things because of the emotion that came forward. I think there still would have been some sort of I'm going to call it destabilizing. I have a feeling. Um, but because of the immense reaction in the time that it took for me to come back out of that third one, it was way too much for me. And later when when the head would, and that was after the fact also, it was a good suggestion. They were trying to get me grounded to be so I could drive, and I was trying, and I got to say they were trying to find food that I could eat, because they had foods, but I'm allergic to certain things. But they went and they found like something that would be
Mm,
grounding, and they were constantly working with that and checking in with me. So that was really good. The head person I get, he had the whole crowd. So they're the other people, they were checking in. And um the head person had the good idea, I thought, of walking outside barefoot on the ground. But I wanted to walk with a different someone else had suggested, one of the other facilitators, and I felt comfortable and did want to walk with him, but the head person like pushed their way in, and that wasn't okay. The hindsight, but I was still in this place that I couldn't really voice, and those feelings. And and it was almost like it was really overtaking me. That energy was overtaking me, where it was confusing actually, where I would have rather talked to this other person. I feel like they would have been better. They would have felt safer in hindsight, because that came up. I'm like, that wasn't okay. This whole wasn't okay. And even the other facilitator wanted to write back with me and have a different facilitator follow them. And everything in my body was like, no, I don't feel comfortable. I'm going to be able to drive home. I am so not okay with this. I think if any of the other people had said they would do that, I would have been okay. So there were flags about the head person that I was really not comfortable with. Um, and at one point, I can't remember where, but I remember it came out of his mouth. He says, I think we went too light with you.
mm,
And And I have no idea at what point he said that. I mean, if he was asking about the first dose, but I think that would have been an indicator like, okay, maybe I didn't feel anything in the first dose, but let's go still light, because it had been voiced, not by me, but also the therapist, that I'm sensitive to the medications. I've been sensitive to all of them. And
yeah.
let's go light. Let's go real light. Uh, and override my wanting to my need in a hindsight, that's my own flag for myself. I needed that embrace. Well, I didn't get that embrace. And I was angry later. I was pissed off because I'm hearing some of the other people there. I was in a Zoom call and I was furious. And I actually, it would have been helpful to voice it in the Zoom call, but I didn't. This head person was not in the Zoom calls, which was good. The other people had to pick it up and take over the integration. I
Mm,
had to pick up a lot of stuff, but yeah, the anger was incredible, because I was like, that that is awful. This is not okay. I'm now empty. I was disconnected from everything. Everything. Any belief I had was just wiped clean. So I didn't really have a connection to here,
yeah.
which is very, very important for me to want to live here, to be alive. And it was gone. Absolutely gone.
It's I'm gonna want to be cautious because it's easy to kind of critique and look back and say what I would do differently or what I think could be done differently. But I think my podcast, I guess I can do it. But again, it seems like your facilitators, the friends, the therapists, the trainees, so to speak, were on the right page. I think if the first one did nothing, absolutely, let's up the dose a little bit, right? You should feel something. So I don't know what was served on the first one, but even in a small dose, we should feel something. So they went extremely light with that. Um, Next dose is and I'd be shocked if they didn't do this because I kind of know them, but one of the protocols I use is I have like a rattle. So I facilitate the medicine and then I'll either rattle or I'll count back down from 10. And the reason I'm doing that is then I can check in with you after the experience. Like, did you hear the rattle? Right. And that's allowing me to gauge how deep you were or if you were even offline. It's like, oh yeah, I heard you rattle. Okay, well, because it's tough to just look at people and gauge how far in the medicine they are,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
Um,
Yeah.
so sometimes I've looked at them, I'm like, I think they're gone. I think
Mhm.
we got them completely offline, and they come back like, no, I was aware of everything. I heard I'm like, oh, it's tough for us to kind of visual gauge it sometimes. But if I facilitate, and then I 10, 9, can check in with you as you're kind of coming back to and you're grounded and settled. And if I'm considering another dose, I could say, did you hear me counting? No, I didn't hear you counting. Or yeah, I heard you till about 7 and then I just okay. Now I know that you were offline. And so if you're offline on the second dose, um, that seems like a pretty good start, right? My recommendation would be to, if you're going to do a third one at that stage, is to even lower the dose even more, right? It becomes like this reverse tolerance with this medicine, especially 20, 30 minutes isn't that long, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not
Right.
that long of a time. There's still some, as you said, even as they were going through it, there was a party that felt like I'm still a little in the medicine to some
Hmm.
degree, or it's still active in me. So you're adding to the previous experiences. So by the time you get to this third one, you're kind of stacked a little bit. Um, but I also see in the community sometimes like this chase for this mystical experience, and I feel like they allow participants to pressure them, or it's their own pressure of like, well, I want them to have this experience. And yes, that experience is beneficial and beautiful for some people, but as you've kind of heard me say before, I'm like, it doesn't have to happen today, right? There may be some disappointment, but I'm
Right.
okay with disappointment because safety is going to be my I'm not going to override safety to avoid somebody not being happy with how I did it, right? They're going to be less happy if I destabilize them.
Right.
So to me, I think if you were offline on that second experience and there was all these concerns about how you would work with the energy and manage the energy and kind of that's a stopping point.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it's easy for me to sit here and kind of say that now, but that would have been my call. And and it seems like a call, as you said, again, within an hour, you're having a full reactivation and a full experience where you don't recall a lot of what's happening. And from 10 to 5 is a pretty long time. That's a
Right.
full day of being, in an altered state of consciousness from an experience. Um, so yeah, I think that third dose is potentially too much. So going light on you, no. And if they did, I prefer to go light, right? Like
Right.
let's
Right.
let's start there. Let's see how this plays out for you over the next couple weeks. We could always come back and do more, right? Like why do we have to do it all today? Um, but I guess I don't want to take too much more of your time, but what were the days, weeks, and months like following the experience, right? Reactivations, your potentially your mental health, overall emotional, like what was going on in your life, after this experience and what's been going on?
So I just want to step back quickly with what you said, because in conversations afterwards with the my therapist who was facilitating, she and I think the conversation went longer than I'm aware of, and I'm pretty sure she didn't. They weren't aware that I was offline.
Mm,
I'm not. I'm pretty sure, or maybe the head person was and thought that was okay. But and she had said, like, again, she would not have gone to the next one,
yeah,
um, if she had the choice. And she had. There were. It seems like there was a lot of questioning, talking to me before we went forward for the third. She was. not the head person, but she was. Um, so I'm aware of that. And also she wanted to give me, of course, like agency for me to make decisions. So there's that. And following the guidance of their head person who, that was unfortunate. Not knowing. So I just wanted to backtrack to that because yeah, and
Because I'm sure they all look back at it now and would have kind of the
so
same
many things. Yeah,
conclusion. So
yeah.
I didn't mean that as a critique of them
No,
or
no, no,
a
no.
criticism
Yeah,
of them. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think it was just again, there was a lot of learning post for
Yeah.
everybody. So so afterwards, the weeks. So I did experience for 2 weeks straight, and then again, I think there was a day or two not of reactivation every single night. I knew it was a reactivation. I would lay down, and it was at night going to bed. I would lay down. I could feel the energy. I could feel that what I want to say, that noise, that whoop whoop noise, and then the going into nothingness. And actually in that experience, that was terrifying. I was absolutely nothing. I was molecules of nothing. And since then I've been able to come to nothing and everything, but it was not a good feeling. And I've never been afraid of death, and I became terrified of death because I said if that's death, that's not what I had experienced before. I'm going to be nothing. There is no I, and I understand that with the ego, but there was really just this total like molecules of ne never coming back to anything again. Um, and I had trouble, like I climbed up a short, not really a mountain, but up high to look out over vastness. I couldn't do it. It everything inside me was like, oh my God, I can't. It was terrifying. It was scary. I could look at the ocean. I tried to go to the ocean. That was a place, a resource for me. I could not look up. I had to look at my feet. It was too vast. Um, I'm finally able to do that. It's taken months, probably just this past month I've gotten to that where I can. That has settled. Reactivations, like I said, I could feel the energy coming in, and I would come back with the holotrophic breath. So I knew I had gone, and I was completely gone. And I would look at the clock if I could remember what the time was before. It'd be at least an hour. Well,
Wow.
and like I said, that happened every night. It was exhausting. And I did talk to my therapist, and we tried different things. Like, let's see if I could try to process it, try to be lay in what do I want to call it? When you're when both sides are the same. I can't remember the word for that. Sorry. Like,
Symmetrical.
thank you, symmetrical, to try to allow the energy to process. Um, and then it started to space out a little bit. But I did have some scary reactivations, and my therapist reached out to other people where when I was driving, and suddenly I was seeing things, and I wasn't here, and it was dangerous, and that scared me. And then I was taught, like, don't feed into that, have an awareness of it, but don't like try to come out of that because it's not a safe space. Like, pick a space. Like another friend, he pulled off the side of the road. He was able to be in it, but for him, it was pleasant. For me, it was not pleasant. I was not in this reality. It felt like I so disoriented. Um, it happened. It was then I actually fell asleep on my couch, so it might have been in a dream, but I remembered the terror. This was probably 2 months after the medicine. I thought I was screaming because I could actually feel the moment, and I hadn't felt that before, when I was blasted apart,
Mm.
let's say. And I could feel that millisecond, whatever you want to call it, the time is so short, of that feeling in the terror in that feeling. So I hadn't felt it before because it was too fast when I was in the experience. And I felt like I was screaming and screaming and screaming. And when I came to, my dogs were calmly laying on me. So I realized I hadn't been screaming, but saying that breath. I felt that breath. And I was like, I do not want that again. That's all I could think of. I don't want that again. So I was actually feeding into the fear because I was terrified. And I would go into sessions. Luckily, I've had a really wonderful support between Zoom calls, and we have a group and my therapists. And so just trying to work through it. And the disconnection from everything. I couldn't connect to nature. Like, everything felt flat. Like there was nothing. Anything I believed in was just gone. Um, and I didn't know how to function. I mean, I looked back at my journal. I mean, I did at one point. It must have been I came to one of the reactivations and said that was a. I wrote down it was amazing. It was beautiful. So I must have felt that, but the fear has overridden those moments. Um, Slowly over the months, I started, and it was just by getting out in nature and trying to change the perspective and working in therapy to connect and being in awe of nature. Like things started to come back or move and rebuild for me. Um, I,
How long has it taken for you to kind of get to this point where you're even able to have conversations about it?
well, this will be going on 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, just short of 5 months. I would say in the fourth month, I was able to talk more. I mean, I was talking about it anyhow, but I think the August, and there was a lot going on. I moved, which is a whole, that was a whole big life event too, into a place where I had to do a lot of work. It was, so there was a lot, there's been a lot going on mentally, absolute panic, working with incredible anxiety. Um, However, this is a positive. As I've transitioned through this, the anxiety has now lessened for me, which is um, incredible for me as far as life, being able to live in life and and feeling more, being more present. Like I said at work, like feeling this, like really, we had a patient who chose hospice. We were able to go sit with him. I was able to be there. It was so uncomfortable, but I stayed in the uncomfortableness. This is not who I was before. I was able. So there's some things that have happened, whether it's the medicine, whether it's other work that I've been doing in therapy. Um, but I always say it's all of it probably. And but it has taken quite a while with a lot of support, a lot of support, and a lot of really um, trying to navigate this and with help and yeah, trying to change
Well,
perspectives. Yeah,
I'm glad you've had so much support because a lot of the folks that I've interviewed just didn't have that support, right? So
and I
you already
think that
had,
yeah, I think that's huge. If I didn't have it, I'd probably be nuts. I don't know that I'd probably or curled up in a ball. Honestly, I don't know how I would have because I wouldn't know. That's probably sheer panic. Yeah, probably just
well,
force myself to have to do daily tasks, which I did have to do for a while. Had to force myself to do the daily things. It was
yeah,
hard.
that's one of my concerns. I think one of the things that we kind of emphasize in the classes, and that's why these stories are so important. Um, yes, people may be, struggling for a couple days, 3 days. Like, that's not extremely uncommon. You can kind of guide them through that. But what happens when they get to a point that you just don't have the skill set to work with? If you're not a therapist, if you're not a psychedelic integration specialist, if you're not really attuned to what's happening and really how to help people get back to some normalcy and normalize the experience. And 5 months is a long time. And so a lot of people are stepping into this space and they haven't had this thought, right? And again, I think that's part of the upfront and intake process of, do we have a support system in place? Do we have this? Because again, as you mentioned earlier, it's like culturally, right? If we were in a more tribal setting and we did this and the whole community did this, it's great.
Right,
We've got that community support. But here it's like, well, now I've got to go to work on Monday. Not the same thing. So I think
right.
a testament to you guys having a good support system and you having a good integration system, because it's still been difficult. 5 months is still
Yeah,
probably
and
feels like an eternity for people
the
going through it.
yeah, and the lonely, that even if there's people out there like to want to, to reach out. And there was times like I was encouraged to speak up after because I said I didn't speak up with the Zoom when I was so angry. They said that might have been helpful for other people to hear, and it's true. Like, okay, you're all expressing this beautiful and how it's changed your life, and this is where I'm at. I'm not there. Um,
Yeah.
so that's and so and just being the anger, the loneliness, the all of it, the fear. And so yeah, it's day after day after day. I had friends, some that I could reach out to. They don't really know and they're not versed in the medicine at all, so that makes it difficult. But they're versed in my um, with themselves and understand as far as my knowing when I need to just have a connection. So learning that too, like I need a connection.
Yeah.
uh, and that's huge without having the connection um, and tools. And then again, I've had, you know, luckily I've built up tools over the years of therapy. If I didn't have those, this could be a whole different space that I was in today. Sorry, I got a little runny
No,
nose.
no.
So
I think,
yeah,
yeah, I think you touched on it too. It's like a lot of kind of the vague integration concepts are like go out in nature, read a book, um, you know, and that's great. But again, as you're sharing, it's like, yeah, those were things that I really enjoyed and brought me a lot of pleasure and grounding. I couldn't do those then, right? So then what do we have?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so like, again, having access to good resources and other folks is crucial. I guess I got two more questions for you, and these should be easy ones. What would you want others to know before working with 5-MeO DMT or Bufo, based on your current experience looking back? If you had a friend that said, "Hey, look, I think I'm going to go do this," what do you think is important for them to know?
Um, First of all, how safe is the environment that they're going to step into? What is their support? And do they have support? Post, post. Right then and there, know who the facilitator is. What are their credentials? Serious credentials, like psychological credentials, medical credentials, all of that. And to know that the experiences, there are so many experiences from what I read, and I read about the whiteouts. I read about possibly this experience. I read it. It's one thing to read. It's one thing to experience. I could not have fathomed that that's what this is. I mean, I have to say, in hindsight, this is another flag for me. When I did go into it, I said, well, I hope I come out and I don't lose my mind. So that right there should have been a flag. Um, but that's the truth with this medicine. You don't know. You have no idea individually what it's going to do to you. And I can go in with all the intentions. I absolutely wanted that embrace. Nope, not even a touch of it. Nothing. Not any of that warmth that I had felt with other experiences. Nothing. Nothing. No connection at all. Just obliteration, um, which was terrifying. And so I would, I guess, the three things: make sure it's safe space, make sure you know the credentials of your facilitator, and in that someone who can even validate that person, you know, that you trust, and also the again, the experience can be not necessarily going to be beautiful, and that's with any medicine, honestly. Just
Yeah,
because someone had this happen, I've experienced that with the other one, combo with and psilocybin. Psilocybin is not a medicine for me. I tried microdosing and it actually brought me dark at this time. Emotionally, it was not helpful.
yeah,
And but it gave me some insights. Okay, this is where I'm at. I am not in a place that this is going to work for me. It may never work for me. I know personally ketamine is not a drug. Like my whole body says no for whatever reason, whether it's allergic or but the more I read about it and studied, I'm like, oh, that is not a medicine. It was suggested at one point for PTSD, but it was like, yeah, there's something I know about that medicine. So I don't know. Read about it. Read other experience. Listen, and and I guess just know it's a powerful. It's the most powerful that I've experienced. I've heard people say that, but hearing that and experiencing it, you've got to be so prepared. And what that
yeah,
looks like entirely, I'm not entirely sure myself. But I know,
yeah,
and if someone you trust, especially a professional, has concerns, listen to them. Listen to them. Yeah. Less, and I had been told that maybe do something else. Less, we had other options. I chose not those options. Like a light dose of MDMA mixed with EMDR. Like that was an option. Just really slow, trying to step into some things. I chose this, so that's on me. That's on
it's
me.
tricky though because it's asking you like yes, there's some onus on you because you ultimately get to make the decisions. But I also think, the lesson for facilitators potentially here is we're supposed to be the experts to some degree. And if you don't know this experience, it's like again, you're consenting to something that you don't even know, right? So if somebody
Right.
comes to me and they're like, I've read about it, I've heard about it, I want to have the full experience. My recommendation may be like, let's start small. and maybe work up to that experience. No, I want the full experience. That's still on me. I mean, they're yes, they're
Yeah,
making that
yeah,
call, they're making the, kind of making their choice. But as the professional, I need to understand that they don't even know what decision they're making. Because you say you could read about this experience all you want. You could watch as many videos you want, you could watch as many podcasts. There is no experience like this experience. So the amount of people that have wanted to sit with me is like, well, I've done LSD and I've done high dose. Like, congratulations. This is not that. This is a
right,
completely different
right, yeah,
medicine, as they all are, but this one is completely different from all the classical psychedelics. And there's no way for me to articulate the experience to you. It's just something that you have to really understand it. And so I think your advice is great. It's like, know the facilitator. Kind of both of I was sharing with you before we started. It's like I didn't know him. I just showed up, never even met the person. He didn't even speak English, right? Didn't say a
right,
word to
right,
me that I recognize. And next thing you
yeah,
know, I'm having two large experiences. Not ideal. Um, no real intake process. So I think those are some flags to look out for. If they're putting more emphasis on the ceremony than the intake process, that's usually a red flag for me. That means they're more focused on the actual facilitation of the experience versus making sure that you're stepping into it safely. They should have really in-depth conversations with you, about your concerns and fears, and kind of create an outline for you. And I know you guys did some of that. I think for
yeah,
folks listening, that would be my advice is, have they worked with other people? Who are do you know these people? Are they going to have support people there? Do they help with integration? Do they not help with integration? Okay,
right,
great. Do I have a support system in place to help me integrate this experience? So just move slow with this one. Again, my protocol that I've shared with everybody before is I like to work with people over a period of months. And if that's not the pace for how somebody wants to come to this medicine, that's okay. There's lots of facilitators that will serve, larger experiences right out of the gate. I don't want that responsibility. I prefer working up, finding minimum effective doses, and then having really strong intentions about what we're doing with each of these doses and these ceremonies, and then eventually working up to maybe a larger experience once we could kind of prove or show or train our body that we could adapt to the experience, because it is such a big experience so fast. And I think your friends and even yours description of it, like, yeah, I mean, this being completely annihilated into everything, right? Everything that you've ever thought that you are annihilated into everything within 15 seconds. It's impossible to articulate how that's going to impact you, right?
right.
Um,
And initially, it wasn't. I didn't feel the everything. Initially, all I felt was nothing.
Nothing.
I was in this void of nothingness. So I didn't get to the everything until probably a month later, or at least.
Ah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't. It was just nothing, nothing. And how do
Well,
you explain nothing? But that's the best I can describe. That's about just
yeah,
a nothing, a void, empty.
yeah. No, that's all right. Last question, I guess, in closing. Anything else you want to share that we didn't cover, or anything you feel it'd be important for the community to hear? Anything that you want to share?
I think you touched on it that the people have to be aware. This is very young, in my opinion. I think we've talked about this in this culture. This culture is not real, it's just learning how to deal and how to support and how to even use these medicines therapeutically. And I've always worked therapeutically. And this is another part too. So I have a history of addiction. It happens to be with alcohol. Very young, I quit, but I didn't necessarily do recovery work. So that's also an awareness because in this culture we chase, and I have experienced that, chase the medicine, chase to jump through. And the thing is, as you said, the going slow is uncomfortable. It's, you're feeling everything. However, I am learning that is the healthier way. And especially here where we don't have a tribe, there is not a tribe. I meant support. It's still got holes in it, because we still go home. I go home alone. Um, we're still living our life. We go out to work, we're in this environment, there's lights, there's music, there's all this stimulation. For me, stimulation has always been an issue, and post this, it was really, really difficult. I think I read that our nervous systems just get completely, I don't know, electrocuted is the best way to say. So you're walking around with these nerve endings, your whole nervous system just on fire, basically. At least that was my experience. So yeah. And from my work medically, like I may not experience the medicines that I give people, but I am very aware and I have to be an expert on things that can happen, all the things that can happen, side effects that might happen, what they're going through. I've had to listen to people over the years to learn their experience. So, yeah, I may not be able to be in their experience, but it's taken years, without going through the medicines because that's different. But to understand, yes, I've heard this. Yes, you could be experiencing that, to hear on all levels too, emotional and all of it, physical. Yeah. So that's basically it.
Well, I appreciate it. I think again the community and culture things just can't be can't be stated enough. I mean, the lineage that I was trained in, my lead facilitator, my trainer was a tribe in New Mexico, and they served it to their 17-year-olds as a rite of passage, right? And I've had people talk about that, and what about my 18-year-old son? And I'm like, look, they're in a tribal community setting, right?
Yeah.
So if I had a bad experience and I needed a week off from work, I'm not calling in, right? And I'm
Right.
surrounded by a community that have all had this experience. Some probably had similar, it'd be very normalized and it'd be significantly different than what we have now. And that was mine. I did it and I flew back to Iowa where no one had heard of it, right? And I'm like, who do I even talk to? Like, who would even
Right.
understand this experience? And so even, having a conversation with the integration specialist for an hour, it's like, that's nice. That's not the same as being surrounded by a community of people that understand
Exactly.
it, that have gone
Yeah.
through it, and that's the world that they're in, similar to like an IA community, right? It's totally different than what we have here. So, um, and I think you nailed it. I mean, people could debate the historic use of this, but from my perspective, to use it the way we're using it now is less than 40 years, about 40 years. That's infancy when it comes to a powerful psychedelic. And I think we're still learning to figure what's the most ideal way of using it. Sorry, guest speaker. Um, and I think that's why it's important to have these conversations about alternative uses, right? How do we go slow with it? And there's more
Yeah.
and more facilitators coming into that space and recognizing that. And so I'm grateful for that. And I think these conversations help that. So I appreciate you taking all the time.
No, absolutely. I'm glad. And yeah, and it's not to scare people off. It's more just to have an awareness and a learning, and then how it's changed. And I agree. For me, the slower, and if I were to work with it again, and at this space right now, not working with anything because integration would like give the time to integrate any medicine, which is I'm saying that now because I'm learning, and this one maybe was a huge lesson for me, huge,
Mm,
huge. So all of that. So thank you, Kirby.
all right. Well, thank you again.